President Biden will meet with congressional leaders for a second time tomorrow to discuss the debt ceiling.
Meanwhile, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen issued new warnings today about a default and the serious economic costs that could be wrought upon our country.
A default would threaten the gains that we've worked so hard to make over the past few years in our pandemic recovery, and it would spark a global downturn that would set us back much further. It would also risk undermining U.S. global economic leadership and raise questions about our ability to defend our national security interests.
President Biden previously met with the 4 top members of Congress to try and address the nation's debt limit on Tuesday. Secretary Yellen says the U.S. risks defaulting on its debt as soon as 3 weeks from today.
Joining us right now is CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe. Ed, yesterday we had Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy blaming each other publicly for the lack of progress made on the debt ceiling. Let's just show that for our viewers and talk.
McCarthy can certainly have his say, and his caucus can have the say on spending cuts, but not holding it hostage to default. Not holding it hostage to default, but rather in the budget and appropriations process.
Chuck Schumer the whole time just hoping to take us to the brink where we're in a crisis. It really seems to me as though Chuck Schumer and Brett don't want him to.
That we might expect, right? Publicly blaming each other. But the next debt limit meeting is tomorrow. And the fact that they are meeting, you've already reported, does suggest that there is some type of progress. So what is happening behind the scenes and what can we expect?
As we understand it, all those meetings are continuing today. Representatives from the White House and the staffs of congressional leadership trying to sort through what, if anything, might be in the realm of the possible for broader spending cuts that would be part of the budget negotiations. A budget, of course, being due by the end of the fiscal year at the end of September often leads to a stalemate in the fall about whether or not to pass a stopgap measure and keep things going until a final resolution. What we also don't know, though, is whether either side is signaling that they're willing to come off their original positions, which was just do it already with no strings attached here at the White House and among most congressional Democrats, or do it with about $3 trillion in federal spending cuts over the next decade and nothing short of that. So we'll see if there's at least an agreement in principle that there have to be some cuts, and if so, whether that frees up any opportunity to pass something either in the short term to extend basically the current debt framework or a longer term agreement that just puts this to rest. But otherwise, as you heard the Treasury Secretary say there, they believe by June 1st we're at a point where the U.S. government can't pay most of its bills.
Well, and we heard former President Trump weighing in on that point last night, saying that Republicans should let the U.S. default on its debt if Democrats don't agree to spending cuts. What would be the implications of that? How dangerous is that thinking, Ed?
Well, defaulting on the debt, at least experts say, would be dangerous because it could lead to a stock market downturn immediately, which means a lot of money lost for people. Could lead to jobs losses across several different industries, especially in the healthcare industry, in government, in the public sector, and in others. There's also good examples that have been shared by experts who track this about the kind of money that the United States might not be able to pay come June. For example, about $47 billion in Medicare payments to doctors and hospitals across the country, $12 billion in veterans benefits, $25 billion in Social Security payments twice that month, and about $4 billion in the federal payroll for federal employees all across the country, from TSA agents to Social Security workers to people here at the White House. So it gives you and of course, then that ripples all across the economy. What doesn't get paid? What spending gets held back by those people? How does that affect, for example, doctors or hospitals that rely on that money? And the president would be forced to make some pretty tough decisions. There are arguments that this should be avoided entirely, either through invoking the 14th Amendment that says that the debt should be guaranteed no matter what, or by taking other measures. But at this point, it looks like that possibility of doing it differently can't get done until the actual issue of whether or not to raise it is done right away.
At least they're speaking with each other. One quick final question for you, Ed. I know the Biden administration announced today the first regulations to limit greenhouse pollution for existing power plants. What is that about?
They would be some of the most aggressive limits on emissions from power plants ever enacted. The EPA saying they would enable the energy sector essentially to avoid about 617 million metric tons of carbon dioxide through 2042. That's basically the equivalent of taking half the 300 million cars in the United States off the road. There is stiff opposition to this among those that run these plants and the industries around them, also from moderate Democratic Senator Joe Manchin, who of course comes from the coal-producing state of West Virginia. He has said in response that he will block all EPA-related nominees in the Senate in response to this. There will be court challenges. It'll take a little while for this to go through. It's been long anticipated, but the administration says it's an example of the aggressive ways that they're trying to combat climate change, which they say, of course, remains its existential threat to the world.
All right, Ed O'Keefe at the White House. Thank you.
Thanks,
Take
Ed.
care.